Hi, this is Chris Petrie. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming by. We're going to have a great time painting this wonderful flower painting in a mason jar. We're going to have all of the details covered here in this video, so we're going to start out with a charcoal drawing. And right from the start, I'll say that when we do this tutorial, you're going to see this finished photograph, which is actually, this jar is actually across from me in my studio, and then I took a picture of it too, so we can have it on camera right here. We'll also have our palette with our colors on camera, so you're going to see the colors that we're mixing on camera, the painting, and the photograph that we're working from. So you'll have everything here at your fingertips to work from. We're going to cover all the brushes we're going to use, the paints. We're going to cover the color wheel, which we mix our paints from, the standard color wheel. So we'll describe all of that really quickly as we get going, so you don't have any mystery in figuring out how you're going to mix your colors. We cover all of that in detail here too. And that's it. And we're just going to have a fun time doing it in an impressionistic manner and fashion. This painting will go really wonderfully for you. You're not so much concerned about a lot of details in this painting. You're concerned about having an enjoyable time, getting the colors onto your canvas, using free brush strokes, mixing lots of colors, and then just understanding as we go the process, which is basically starting out with the charcoal drawing and then getting in your darker darks, which we start with all the darks of the painting. The dark green leaf forms and stems, we do those first, and then from there we start mixing out our background colors and our flowers. So you'll see all of it here covered. We'll be right back. Alright, so we're just going to continue on here. We saw the finished painting. We have a mason jar, some wildflowers, and a rose, and a couple, again, wildflowers and some leaf forms. Simple kind of composition. Let's get started. So this is what actually is right across from me. So if you can imagine, I have a table set up in my studio right across from my art table that I'm working on right now. So I'm standing up at a art table. It's kind of like a shop bench almost. So it's a big heavy table with big large timbers for legs and a big heavy thick top on it. And it's my where I create my videos in my studio. And then right across from me, I have another table set up a little bit lower, and I have a tablecloth on there, and I have some foam boards set up behind this mason jar with some flowers, some wildflowers. And so we're going to get started here. I'm going to actually kind of look at this and just kind of make some general observations. Right when we start, we're just always kind of thinking of composition. Also, where's our light coming from? That's also very important. So I'll just take a quick Sharpie, and I'll just put up here on the, I'll put up there a insignia for a light. And actually, let's see if I have something that might, let me see here. Yeah, this will work. So I'll just get something that we can kind of see a little better. I'll just put a little bit of watercolor paint here. So this is our light source here. So I'll make a spotlight here with a little bit of watercolor paint. This dries really fast, so it won't smudge after about 5 minutes. So that's our light source. And we make this icon just to always remind us, let's know where the light's coming from in our painting. Sometimes it might be coming from multiple directions too. So that's always a good thing to kind of like contemplate before we start our paintings, whether you're painting in oils, watercolor, if you're painting with acrylic paintings, or just doing some pencil drawings, whatever it is, kind of know the light source. Maybe if you're outdoors, obviously the sun is high up in the sky, it's kind of shining straight down, or maybe if the sun is early afternoon or early morning, the light's coming from the sides like this. If you're in a room and there's a spotlight on your subject matter like this here, I have a spotlight set up shining this way across the vase and flowers. So that's why I'm going to put this here. But sometimes you might be in a room and there's multiple light sources. There's even some light coming from the front too, because I have lights by my table here that are putting some light onto the front of this too as well. So just an interesting thing to kind of keep note of when we're starting up and getting our first preliminary layout of our painting and drawing. I'm going to use some charcoal, simple charcoal pencil here for my drawing. And I'm just going to make, again, an observation. This is about halfway. The top of this mason jar is about halfway here, so I can put a charcoal mark there. That's the top. It's pretty much centered, the vase. The bottom of the vase is almost right to the bottom of our rectangle here that we have set up with our tape border. So I'm just going to get that information in now. I just make a little bit of some notes that the mason jar has a little bit of a tapered edge up here at the top of the jar. And if you find that maybe something is, this seems to be good, I'm going to stick with this. There's a bit of a handle here, metal handle. We can see that. And then there's some dark leaf forms that are inside the mason jar here. And there's some stems. So I'm just going to capture these details here, just a few details. We're going to do mostly everything with our paint. I'll get a few of these leaf forms here, these dark green leaf forms. And I'm just going to loosely kind of just rough them in. We're going to do most of the work with our paintbrush and our paints. And I'll just do this flower up here. It's like a rose, I think, over here. This is a white rose over here. And then there's some other white flowers over here. Another white rose actually over here. And we have some stems. And then up here we have another flower up here. So I'm just going to, that's kind of behind. And then up here we have another like that. Some stems. Then we have some more white flowers and small wildflowers. I'm just going to put some indications of that. I'll be aware of this when I'm painting. And then we're just going to put some more green leaf forms in here, but the rest we can handle with our brushes and paint. And a few more leaf forms here. And I think we have it pretty much. Then here we're going to look at where the back of the table is. So the table that the mason jar is resting in. Could put a little bit of some indications of the back of the mason jar there. It's pretty much about here, just a little bit up from the bottom. And that's the table going across like this. And that's good. So now you see how we're just basically using our charcoal pencil, getting some indications of some lines. And then what we'll do is now we're going to get our paint onto our palette paper, which is kind of like wax paper, basically. It's made by Strathmore. Incidentally, any supplies you see here, for the most part, maybe 90% of the supplies or 80% of the supplies I'm using here, my paints, my brushes, papers, things like this, canvas. It's all in the description box below, links to Amazon. I buy all my art supplies on Amazon. I find that they have pretty much usually at least 95% of all the products that I would ever need for my art supplies. They're right there on Amazon. So I just order there, and it's simple. It shows up at my house 2 days later or so. And I don't have to go out and search around too much. And, you know, I can just spend time painting and not have to worry about going out and spending a lot of time looking around for products and things like that, art supplies. But in any case, let's come back. We'll make a quick color wheel on our palette paper. So we're going to use our color wheel. We'll just talk about this a second when we come back. And we'll mix up some paint and we'll get ready to paint. All right, so now we're going to just have a quick idea of, we're going to use our color wheel to get our basis for our color mixing. Essentially, this is pretty much something that you can do with your color mixing and putting out your paints on your palette, whether you're using a hardboard palette or you're using palette paper like we have here. The main idea is that you could just use the basic method of working out from your 3 primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, you can mix your orange, green, and violet, purple. And then once you're mixing these out, then you're having a lot of flexibility with all of your colors right here on the color wheel, right where you have your basic primaries and your secondary colors. And then you can mix out tertiary colors from there, which are just basically more mixes derived from this main 3 primaries and 3 secondary colors. So that's kind of the idea of it. And when you mix this way and you use all of your colors and you mix them from the start like this, you won't have much of a problem with things looking unpleasant in your paintings, because there's odd looking colors that are kind of competing and making things look disjointed in your artwork and in your paintings. And that would go for any type of painting, really. So colors are kind of, especially for someone that's just starting out, or maybe your first couple years of painting, especially in oils, like you're painting now in oils, you want to give yourself an advantage of trying to really make good looking paintings when you start with the oil painting medium. And if you just stick with your color wheel colors, for the most part, you'll find that you're really going to give yourself a really good, head start with color mixing, and you'll have kind of like this as your basis. And then as you go forward, you can add more colors to your palette and so forth, and we'll show you more colors as time goes on. But for the most part, we really are in great shape if we can just stick with this kind of idea. So basically what I'll do is I do have some of these paints that I keep. When I have leftover paint at the end of my painting, I will usually take a palette knife and scrape up some of the leftover paint, and I put it in a small vitamin case like this, and then we could just take this and then we could put our, and to be honest with you, we're not going to use much red, so I'll just actually, that's enough red actually for what we're going to use and mix. And then we're going to also go with yellow. I think I'm going to use some yellow ochre, and this is yellow ochre here. We'll use a little more of the yellow ochre, so I'll put some of that here. Yellow ochre. And then I should have some blue in here too. And I can use cerulean if I want. Maybe I'll use a couple blues. I'll use a little bit of the French ultramarine blue, and then a little bit of the cerulean blue. And I have cerulean blue right here too as well. Sometimes this might get a little bit, so I'm using 2 different blues here, but they're basically blue. So that's my blue right there. Red, yellow, blue. And that is it. Then we can just start mixing out. From there, you could add a little bit of burnt umber. I like to do that. I like to add a little bit of burnt umber, maybe up here, and that's kind of close to the yellow or red. You can put it near either red or yellow. And what else do we have? Some white. Let's put out a little bit of white. And I use a large tube of white because white sometimes we can use, some paintings we use more than others, or sometimes we use a little more white than at other times when we're painting. But I think we're going to use a decent amount of white on this painting, so I'll put that there. And again, that's our color wheel. And then it's real simple from here. I'll use a brush at this point, so I always have tissues and paper towels to clean off my palette knives and paper or paint brushes as I'm working. And we'll use some of our synthetic brushes here. So I'm going to use these synthetic brushes. These are incidentally Princeton Aspen line brushes. They're synthetic, made for oils. And I think they also work for acrylics. And they're a filbert brush, and this is a number 2. So I always say, Princeton is a great brush. My local art store, Blix, has a lot of brushes at their location. And I find that I've, over the years, been trying different brushes from there, always. And, Princeton seems to be a great brand for either student level brushes or even professional brushes. They make really high quality brushes, I find. So I'm going to use this, and then we'll just start mixing our secondaries. So we have our primaries here. And again, if your paint's a little bit, I just added a little bit of water to this. Sometimes if you save your paint in a container like I did, I can kind of see already that and this is a learning experience here. Yeah, sometimes it gets a little lumpy, some of the paint. You know, I'm not going to worry too much about it. But we'll make some orange here. I'll pick up a little bit of the red to make my orange. Like that. All right, that looks like a pretty good orange to me. For our colors too, especially, I can see that there's a little bit of an orange-red for this flower up here. That'll be fine for that. And we're not really, I don't think there's much red in the painting, maybe a little bit in the mixes of the background. There's some kind of warm colors mixed in there, but we'll work with the orange, red, and gold that we do have here. I think that's enough paint that we have there for that. And I will also mix up green for the leaf forms, and again, I'll always have some paper towels here. I rinse off my brush. I might dry off a little bit of water on there. And then I'll make some green here, so I'll take some of that yellow ochre and then some of the blue. And we'll mix a nice olivey green. I think that's going to look good. So I just slowly add a little bit of blue to that. Maybe a touch of water, just to thin it down a little bit. So I just dampen the brush with a little bit of water. And we can even make a little more of a cooler blue over here, so we can get a little bit of a darker blue over here. So I think we'll stick with our primary and secondary colors. I don't think I'm going to mix out much of the tertiary colors, really. I think this will be enough for us. We'll keep the color scheme in this painting very simple. And let's see what else we might mix here. Some violet. So violet, I will go with red here. And again, I'm going to add some water to that, thin it down a little bit, some red here, and then some blue. And that's going to give us a good violet. The French ultramarine blue and cadmium red makes a nice violet. All right, that's looking good. All right, so we worked with our color wheel, and again, we just basically we just put down our red, yellow, blue for our primaries, and then we just mixed our red and yellow together to get a nice orange, yellow and blue together to get a good green here, a nice olivey green. Then we added a little bit of more French ultramarine blue to the olivey green to give us a little bit of a darker green, so we have a little more versatility with our darks, because I can see there's some dark and light greens over here in this photograph. And then from there we just made some violet too. We'll put some violet colors in here, and I think the rest is going to work out pretty well. We'll use some white to thin down and lighten up some of these colors that we're using here too as well. So let's get started. And again, we always kind of say you're starting out a little thinner with your paints, and then as we get toward the finishing of the oil painting, we might use thicker paint. But right now, we'll kind of stick with some of these thinner mixes here, and we're just going to go with the darks. So I'm going to just start getting some of these dark greens here. Okay, and then you could just mix as you need. And I think I might be able to do the entire painting with this number 2 filbert brush. Okay, so I'm just going to keep moving along here, and I'm going to work in a I'm going to work at a good pace. I'm not going to really work painstakingly slow. I kind of want to get a good rhythm going with my painting here. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to keep a good tempo going. And I'm, really, that's like my main idea here is we already have our colors mixed now, so we're pretty much just repeating the process. So I need some more green, no problem. I get my gold, which is my yellow ochre, a little bit of blue, Maybe we add a little bit of water to that just to thin it down a touch. And that's what's great about this water mixable oil paint. If I didn't mention that in the beginning of this painting session here, I use water mixable oils. And what's great about water mixable oils, no fumes, no flammable paint thinners and things like that. You can just squeeze out your paint, water mixable paint, add a little tiny bit of water to thin down your paint as you need, and you're all set. You're basically going to get a great result with your paint mixes, because you won't need anything else but a touch of water. Great thing too is if it gets on your clothes, your furniture, anything like that, no worries. You can wash it up with soap and water. You can wash up your hands and any of your tables and whatever you're working on, your working surfaces, with soap and water, or just water, or maybe, something like that. Nothing more needed. So I'm just going to work through some darker passages I see in here. There's some more leaf forms up here. So I hope everyone is having a good time so far. We're having fun with this. Sometimes I'll make the leaf forms a little darker on the underside here. I know the light's coming from this direction, so that's why I'll make that a little darker there. You can even have the same idea of going back in and maybe adding a little darker bit of leaf form there. And then a little bit lighter on top, up here, like that. And the idea is we're painting this alla prima. And what's great about alla prima is you're just painting in everything at one time. As well, you're starting with your darks first. You can see how we're starting with our darks first. And that's kind of the magic of painting alla prima, is you sort of set the whole pace of your painting by focusing in on the darks. And once you have your darks in there, your dark tonal values, then the rest is just kind of comes together for you, because then you're working more with lighter tones, and you're not really working into a lot of your darks anymore. You're going to be going into lighter paint mixes. So I think we are and that is looking fine. We can do some of the stems with our darks at a later time too if we want. Once we're done doing maybe some of the background. We're going to paint in a background here too as well. All right, so we are moving along here. Let's start. You could bump up to a little bit of a larger brush. Maybe we'll go up to the number, this is a number 6 filbert, so that's quite a bit. You can see that's a decent amount larger than number 6 here. But we have a large background here. So we could start working in our background with this larger brush. This is kind of better for the smaller details that we were doing here. But I think at this point, we can start using a larger brush now. Now to get the background color, I think we're just going to use, I'll tell you, the one thing I wanted to do before we move into working with the background is I think I just want to get some of these other flower. So there's a little bit of that orangey flower there. Like that. And maybe we will add some orange over here too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to embellish the truth here. So maybe I don't see any orange down here too much, but I'll pretend I'm seeing some of the orange in the flower down here, and maybe even some over here, so that I sort of am mixing around that orange color a little bit more. It's almost like a pinkish orange, kind of a salmony color. And then I also noticed that I do have some yellow here, maybe a little bit of white with that yellow. And this is the fun part now. You can kind of just get in your we can start putting in our flower shapes with a little bit of white and a little bit of this orangey and gold here. And then once we get this kind of nice light, kind of a golden color with a little bit of the salmony color in there. Once we have that, which is a little bit of the orange and a little bit of the yellow and a little bit of the white, once we start getting that onto the canvas, that's going to kind of set us up for some good success with the rest of the painting, because now we have our flower shapes in there. And at that point, now we can go in with our larger brush, and now we're just going to take these colors we just mixed here and just keep mixing those colors into the background with a little bit of violet. So I will take a touch of that violet here, very slight amounts, and I will put a little bit into the flowers here and there. And again, the idea is try to mix your colors, any colors you're adding into your, and that's kind of a shadowy color, this purple, so I'll put that on the shadow side, which is the right side of all of these flowers this way. The light's coming here, the shadows are going to be a little more violet purple, and we'll put that over here on the right side of the flowers, like that. So just so we have some of that purple working in the painting, and you see how we stick to the game plan of using the same colors throughout the entire painting. So whenever you are painting and all of a sudden you say, I want to use a little purple in this now, then you say, all right, well, I have to mix that purple around pretty much everywhere. And now at this point, larger brush, same colors, white. We can get a little more aggressive with mixing a little more color now. So I'm taking out a little more of that white, putting that on the palette up here, then going in with the orange. And I wouldn't take the whole bunch of paint and just mix it and swirl it around and swirl it around. When you're mixing subtle colors like this now for the background and things like that, have a little bit of white and gold up here, white and gold up here, maybe a little bit of the orange, maybe in the center area here. So you have some different color mixes that you're going to work throughout your painting. A little bit of violet too. Maybe over here, we just mix in a little bit of the violet with that white, and like this, and there you have it. Okay, and then we just start working in our background. And what you can do is you can use the fine detail brush that we started with to get in some of the finer areas. So let's get this blocked in. Don't be afraid to add some green too in those background colors. So essentially now we're kind of kicking it into high gear, so to speak. This is an impressionistic style painting. I like to paint in an impressionistic fashion. I'm not going to sit here and spend hours and hours suffering over every detail. I want to use quick brush strokes and get things on the canvas. And that also will make a beauty to the painting. If you are working at a rapid fashion, that does most times equal sort of a look all of its own, that impressionistic look of kind of an aggressive application of the paint. You can use the paint strokes, any way you want to. Cross hatch, like X's, so forth. I'm going to add a little more water here, I'm just going with thin glazings of paint, as you can see. And again, once you are finished with using the large brush, then you can get into these really small, fine areas with a smaller detail brush. Okay, so now we're going to do a little more mixing of gold and white, orange, white, orange and white up here. A little bit of that purple again up here. All right, so we're just going to continue to make sure we're mixing our colors around the canvas on the background. If you get a little bit of a dark color in there, no problem. You can always pick up a little bit of white and just kind of counteract that dark by just adding a little light to it. And then here we go, right into the vase, tie that in. Okay. Again, you can add in some green. Doesn't have to be a lot, just a little bit in the background color. You have lots of green already in the flowers and the leaf forms, so it makes sense to add a little bit in the background too. All right, so we have our background complete. Our table, let's do our table next here. We're going to keep working. A little bit lighter, more white, a little bit of yellow. So I'm going to use more light here. Oh, I might need more white than that. Let's get more of the white here. Maybe I'll start a little spot over here. I want to make the table cloth and the table a little bit lighter, like that. Okay. And I'm going to take some of that white. And I'll take some of that brighter white too, here and there, just to give it like splashes of light here and there. Have fun with your paint strokes. If you have a large area like this, have fun. Take that brush and just, put some brush strokes on there. Have a good time. And you can soften anything out that you see that you might want to make softer, the brush strokes. But I think that looks good the way it is here. Okay. And we're almost finished here. All right, let's take a break now. We've done most of the work. We're just going to have to fill in and paint in some of the details around the stems that we have and some of the details in the vase here or the mason jar. And a couple more details too. We're going to go back in and touch up some of the leaf forms, and as well, we'll do a little more detail to the flower petals in here, just to have a little more detail to those flowers and those flower petals and shapes. But I think for the most part, you can see we have most of everything really blocked in now. So now it's just basically going back to our smaller brush that we started with here, the smaller number 2. Filbert brush, and we're going to set this larger filbert brush down for now. I don't think we're going to need that anymore. And also too, we can use maybe like a number 2 round brush like this for some of those fine details around some of those stems and so forth, and around the flowers. Okay, so let's take a quick break. We'll come right back and we'll finish up. All right, so let's continue on here and finish up with the final details of this painting. Beautiful oil painting here. So again, I'm shifting down to a number 2 filbert brush here which we started with for some of the fine details. And then we're going to also use a number 2 round brush. And these are synthetic brushes. And we're going to use those for the fine details of the stems and some of the other details on the mason jar and so forth, and some of the petals of the flowers. So I'm going to rinse off my brush a little bit here, dampen up my brush. And I think I'm going to start with some white. Now this is we're going to start using some thicker paint now, because we did go thin to start with, and then as you know, when we're painting oils, the paint's going to get thicker as we finish up, because we're going to be using thicker. So I'm going to look at I'm going to see if I can move my lighting just a little bit like that. I can't hardly see the phone. All right, that is some of the leaf petals here. These are white roses. Okay. Then we're going to have a few more shapes here. And again, you're going to have fun with this and just impressionistically get those flower shapes in. Don't worry, you're not trying to copy nature. That would be kind of disingenuous. Okay, and what we'll do is you will be able to go back in and add a little bit of, we're going to add some shadows to some of these roses and these wildflowers that we have here. And there's a few more. I think we'll need a little more white, and that's why I say in a painting like this we are using a little more white than maybe on average. So we'll just add a little more white to that. And this is basically straight white. I'm just using straight white for the most part. I'll move it on down here. It might mix in with a little bit of that orange and gold in this little bit of section over here. So it is a little bit. And then if you maybe want to add in a few more bits of flower buds and things like that, you can do that. I'm going to do that here. The same thing here. You can add a few there if you want. So it's your art, it's your painting. You can add things that you necessarily don't see in here. That's up to you. But I think already I'm feeling pretty good about this. I think everything is looking good. Okay, and then all we have to do now is concentrate on, let's finish up all of the areas that we see that are left that are still canvas. We don't want to leave raw canvas. We want to make sure we cover everything, basically. So I'll go back in and we'll just... So that's the next thing I want to do. My next goal right now is let's cover up the canvas. So we don't want to leave the canvas without paint on it. Okay. And I think that will be good. And again, you can lift up and get some good dollops of paint on there. You can really get some thick paint. Don't be afraid to, goop it on there. Impasto is absolutely beautiful. I don't use it enough. Lots of paint. Get it, drop it on there, dab it on there. Have fun with it. It's your artwork, man. Have fun with it. Okay, good. Now, I will empty out my water container and just put in some fresh water. Just a side note, as I'm working, then I will I'll get that number 2, like we said before, the really number 2 round. Blue and gold. It's going to give us that green. I add a little bit of water just to thin it down a little bit. Then I roll my brush around, and I just want to go in and get some of these leaf forms a little bit shaped a little better. And we can also get a little more of that thicker paint. Now what happened here is we did use some of that leftover paint. Now that I think about it, unless you can keep your leftover paint really free from air infiltration, let's say, that's the key. So I'm sure there's containers you can purchase. I have to look into that myself to keep the air from getting into the paint, because the air has gotten into some of this paint that I am using right now, and it works. It's going to be okay, but I would rather use more fresh, smooth paint. Right now, this is a little bit. But again, it works. I can make this stuff work. No big deal. Let's see here. We got that. Okay. And again, have fun with this. The basic thing now is just let's get some more of those darker bits of color in there. Okay, a few more stems. You can add in a few stems you don't see in the painting, that's fine. I'm just going to add in a few details here on the jar. There's a little bit of a darker shadow in there, in the jar. In the bottom of the jar, I also noticed there is, let's do a little bit of that purple shadow there. Here, a little bit of purple. A little bit of shadow here on this side. Again, have fun, free brush strokes for your shadow, like that. Maybe that metal. Okay, a little bit of points on the green leaf forms just to regain some of those fine points if we need to. But I think that's it. I think that's a finished painting. Maybe there's a little bit of shadow, purple along the wall here. I'll just do that quickly and then smooth it in a little bit. Maybe uplift it in a few spots like that. Take the larger brush again, maybe the larger filbert, and just maybe smooth that little bit of darker shadow there. Just smooth it in a little bit. I hope you've had a lot of fun with this painting and enjoyed the process. And again, we said the light's coming from here, so there will be a little bit of a shadow on this side of the tablecloth where we see there might even be a shadow over here a little bit. We can make some more purple, blue, red. There's a little bit of a shadow there. Okay, so that's the main idea here, is have fun. It's impressionistic again. We're not trying to make every detail perfect. There might be some shadow over here. On that side. All right, I think we have a beautiful painting. I think there's only one other thing I could, a little bit of the shadow on this side here of the flowers. Just a couple little bits of. And we've had fun, that's for sure. Enjoyed ourselves, mixed up our paints real simply with the color wheel. Again, don't forget, your color wheel is your key to success for mixing colors. You just get your red, yellow, and blue on your palette, mix out from there your secondaries, orange, green, and violet, and then from there you can just mix as much as you like, using some white. If you want to lighten things up a little bit, you can use some burnt umber if you want to make things a little darker, and you should have plenty of success with that without having to worry too much about buying a lot of extra colors or anything like that. Let's just peel off the tape and see how this looks. This would be as if it's framed. And that's why I suggest also too, please tape your boards so you have a little bit of a border around your work. It looks a lot better when you peel off your tape, because I know many times, like myself, many of you probably do a lot of painting, but you're not going to do a lot of framing, more or less. So since you're not going to invest a lot of time in framing your work, you should frame ones that come for your paintings that come out really good. Please frame those. Go pick out some frames for your paintings if they come out really good. The ones that are looking good, frame those, give them as gifts, birthday gifts, holiday gifts. Maybe some people will be interested in purchasing a few, whatever. But at this point, we're all set. I think it looks beautiful. A very impressionistic flower arrangement with a gorgeous mason jar here. And we had a really good time doing this. Okay, so we'll come back soon. Within the next week or so, we will create another painting. Maybe we'll try something a little bit different. Maybe some ocean scenes, or maybe some still life. Maybe some outdoor landscape painting. We'll figure out something to do. I'll mix it up. Those of you that are following my channel on a regular basis, thank you so much for coming by, painting with me. I'm hoping that you'll subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, if it's your first time here, or if you're not sure, if you subscribe, all that does is just you'll see the videos coming out each week or so. I guess every other week, basically, we create a new video. So every 2 weeks, we're getting together, we're creating a painting, and that's really... If you subscribe, you'll be following with us. It's easy. You won't lose track of us here. And all right, we'll see you on the next painting.